Hey, ladies, gentlemen, and transgenders. Welcome to the 12th episode of the Slothcast, a Heroes of the Storm podcast that will help you win more games. And just this week, I asked Ravatar, knock knock.
Who's there?
Who? You sound like an owl. Yes, that's right. Your friendly neighbor Latino Narsha is here once again, but I'm not rolling alone. Oh, no. With me, I have a multiple season Grandmaster. He is a captain and shot caller of a team in the elite division of the Heroes Lounge. He is still stuck in the frozen north we call Finland and makes his return to the show a second week in a row. Welcome, Ravatar.
Roach, this was your job. I did not sign up for this. Hello, Nasha.
Hello, Ravatar. It's good to have you back again. So, how are things on your end?
I'm doing fine. We've been rather well in Team League lately. Been playing a lot of Heroes of the Storm, and I'm actually just this season Grandmaster, been Master past seasons, but almost correct.
Need to do what I can to hype you up.
Yeah, but I've been mostly working and playing Heroes of the Storm with other griefers.
Seems like regular life. Next up, we have the man that boosted straight into Division 1 in the Heroes Lounge to spread his mantra of a feed-based strategy to the best amateur teams in Europe. He is a brilliant hero crafter and strategist, the man who put feed in I Never Feed. Welcome back to the show, Frog.
Thank you, Narsha. Yeah, much the same as Ravatar, unsurprising. I'm in his team, and I've never been Master or Grandmaster though, so.
No, that's why I didn't mention it, because
Yeah.
who wants to listen to someone that isn't Grandmaster, right?
Yeah.
We had a need for a feed, and then Roach joined it, and suddenly we didn't need any more feed.
He was bad, man. We played our first lounge game this week, but unfortunately there was a lot of lag.
In 2 games with a bot, feels bad.
It was. Hopefully next week we will have less technical issues, and the enemy team will have less technical issues as well.
Yeah, I guess it's most fun when everything works just as it should, and the winner of the game just comes down who feeds the less. It's great to hear that you've filled up the feed quota, at least, for Need for Feed. So you'll have a successful Division 1 season ahead of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, just before we move on to our special guest this week, Frog here. He is a well-renowned Tyrael player, and to show that off, here is how to use Sanctification. Now, as our special guest this week, representing Germany, is a newcomer to the show. Yes, another Grandmaster player is here to pop his Slothcast virginity. He has played the game since Alpha and even competitive for Neptune Gaming back in those days. After that, he has managed to not fall out of the top 200 in Hero League for Europe, but unfortunately have trouble climbing due to griefing teammates. He is part of a German coaching group, but will do it in English for free today. Welcome to Uwe Im Fabulous.
Hey.
Hey, and welcome to the show. And first, I have to ask you, what's up with the name Uwe Im Fabulous? Like, is that a German thing?
No, it's not. The UW is just like, ooh, I don't know. That was like a really dumb idea a few years ago, I guess.
Okay, so your name is Ooh, I'm Fabulous.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Would you mind if I just call you Fabulous instead?
Yeah, of course, like Fab, or you could also call me Uwe, like the Germans do, because Uwe is a German forename.
I see. You're playing in the Heroes Lounge this season. How was everything? Like everything from joining a team, getting placed? Because you're on a free agent team, am I right?
I think that's not existing anymore. I tried to contact my mates and no one's there. I don't know. Like, and now I'm looking onto my profile and the team is gone.
Oh,
Good.
I think you placed on FAT number 5, like free agent team number 5, one of the free agent teams. But unfortunately, that didn't work out, as I understand. What's the idea now? Are you looking to find another team to join for the season?
I was thinking about joining a team, but then again, I would like to play Open Division for this season at least. And I'm currently working on my roster. But yeah, that essentially means I can't really play Heroes Launch since these people don't want to play Heroes Launch. And I would like to find a team that says like, okay, we're just going to practice like once or twice a week and play the games. So I could do that, but that doesn't really work out as it seems.
Yeah, hopefully you can get it to work out, like find a balance, and feel free to continue being active in the Heroes Launch community. Now, the guys are with me this week to discuss all the latest happenings in the game we all love so much and probably spend way too much time on. And for our big special, we're going to go back to one of the most popular segments that we've had on the show earlier, a map strategy special. And this time we're having a look at Sky Temple. It's always in rotation and is very methodical, but we'll get back to that, because with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Garrosh Hellscream to the Nexus. What do you think, guys, about the Garrosh reveal happening just a couple of days ago?
Well, I'm personally excited mostly because it's a warrior and Blizzard is not really keen on releasing true warriors. Looking at Diva, before that was Zarya. Before that was Dehaka.
Varian was in there.
Multiclass. Like, that was the one warrior they made, and that was the one guy they didn't intend to be a warrior. So,
I mean, they haven't released a tank. Like, Varian is basically just a tank. Like, that's like, nobody drafts him any other way. Before that, the last actual tank that you can draft as a tank they released was Johanna. That was 2 years ago, and like I'm gonna be fairly disappointed honestly if this is another bruiser, because the bruiser meta is insanely saturated right now. You already have like 10 viable heroes for that role or something.
Yeah, because Garrosh Hellscream is obviously going to be a warrior, as we saw, but as Frog just mentioned, the lack of main tanks is it's open that it is a kind of a problem there, and it has been such a long time since we saw one last time. But like looking from like how Garrosh looks, how his lore is in World of Warcraft and the Warcraft universe, stuff like that. Fabulous, do you think he'll be a main tank?
I can't imagine. Like, I mean, I'm very happy about Garrosh in general, just because I really wanted to have a new Warcraft hero. Like, I was like gambling on me for anything, or even like an Eridor Lord, as I saw the portal thing he revealed. But I don't think he's gonna be main tank. Like, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
He's more of a bruiser. Yeah. He's more the guy that just walls every time.
To be fair, there are tanks like ETC that just have one big axe and they are still like tanks to begin with.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way.
Yeah, that's a good point. With ETC, they kind of like make it work. But like, from what I know about Garrosh from playing WoW for way too many years, like he is a brawler. Seems like kind of here. But I don't know. Like, give him the right kit, and he can, of course, main tank. And yeah, I hope very much that he can fill that role, because it's way too few heroes that can at the moment. Fabulous, you mentioned that you were maybe hoping for something else when we saw the teasers, the big portal to Outland. How about you other guys? Did you think anything else? Like, what were you hoping for?
I would have liked to see Kill Jaden, but as I saw the portal on Twitter and someone posted on it like, oh, look, there's Garrosh. You could see like the thingy in the portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, that actually makes sense. I mean, Kill Jaden is like should be bigger, even if he's like living in an avatar or something. But yeah, I mean, anything from Warcraft, I'm happy about, because I just love the lore.
There's a thing about Garrosh that if you have played World of Warcraft, you know that he smashes things with axe, but he also had a signature move, which is kind of like Stitch's hook, where he would throw the chain of the gore howl and would pull people to himself and then smack them with the fist. I'm kind of intrigued if there's some kind of ability where you have a long cooldown hook that throws a punch when you get in close range of Garrosh or something. It would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I just have to ask really quick. Have any of you played any League of Legends?
Yeah. No.
It's a long shot. Yeah, there's a character there called Darius, and he also has like a big axe, and like he I can imagine his kit being Garrosh's kit being somewhat similar to that. But yeah, let's just not spend any time on that then. Fro, did you have any other thoughts about which hero was going to join the Nexus when you saw the teaser?
I kind of expected Grom, but just close.
Feels bad, man.
I never played WoW as well, so but I did play Warcraft 3, so Garrosh as a character wasn't that familiar to me.
Yeah, I also actually thought about Orgrim or Doomhammer, mostly because like the second teaser we saw was of Orgrimmar, and that could maybe be a thing. Of course, it also makes sense with Garrosh, but yeah, I don't know. Orgrim Doomhammer would fit more into the main tank slot, which is maybe why I thought about it or wished it would happen.
But then there would be 2 Doomhammers because of Thrall.
Yeah,
sure. I was personally expecting, when I did see the Dark Portal, I was expecting Manoroth. That was also expected by, or leaked a long time ago by Blizzard, that there is a concept for Manoroth made. But slightly disappointed. But Garrosh is still really great.
Yeah, Garrosh is fine. I think it's going to play out decently. At least I hope so. Then again, I'm a little bit worried since he looks like a brawler bruiser. But yeah, we'll have to see. It's probably going to be cool. But yeah, I was also hoping or looking forward to this. We're going to see them at some point, like the Kil'jaedens, the Archimons, the Pit Lords, the Manoroth, stuff like that.
But Blizzard did send a message to some forum that they actually were quite creative with Garrosh's kit and did something new, or some kind of message like that. So I don't expect he will be like a normal bruiser like Sonya or something, but
yeah,
something I'm hoping there will be something included with the Shah infestation or Blood of Manoroth and tapping upon that or something like that.
Yeah, like for those that didn't play Mist of Pandaria, the World of Warcraft expansion, in there, Garrosh, he becomes evil and he uses the powers of an old god, Yasharaj, to, if I pronounce that correct, to get some extra powers. And the Shah-infested Garrosh would be a cool thing. But yeah, we'll see which path they go down. For now, we don't know much more than he's going to come to the Nexus at some point. Do we know when the PTR with him is going to come out?
I would expect on Tuesday.
Already? Yeah.
That's the usual, right?
I read I think I read an announcement that he's gonna come on PTR on the week of the 31st.
Okay. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see a little bit more time then. Moving on. Last week, we talked a little bit about HGC, Heroes Global Championship, because there was a lot of things that could happen to decide which teams were going to go forth representing the region at the Western Brawl. We totally failed on explaining that because it was so much that could happen, like if this team beats this team and stuff like that. But now some more games have been played, and we can finally congratulate the teams that secured themselves a spot at the Western Brawl. For Europe, Fnatic, reigning world champs, are going to go together with the Team Expert and Team Liquid. Any surprises there, guys? Any Dignitas fanboys that are crying their salty tears?
I think Fnatic in instead of playing Ducks, not like this.
Not like this, yeah.
The true champions.
Yeah. I'm actually pretty happy that Dignitas is not going.
Yeah, this is like it's the first time they don't make an offline event. It kind of feels good.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Dignitas, I gotta say.
Oh.
And then again, I'm really happy that Expert goes and Liquid as well, because I would like to see both of them performing offline.
Yeah, I agree. I was also kind of like, it would be cool if Tricked went with guest and friend of the show Gnappe. But yeah, I like Team Liquid. I'm kind of an old school romantic, and they've been around for a long time in under different names. So yeah, I like that Team Liquid managed to secure themselves a spot, and hopefully they can do good together with Expert and Fnatic. And going up against them from North America is Gale Force Esports, Tempo Storm, and Team Freedom. Not sure what you think about that, especially in Team Freedom. Like, they barely avoided the Crucible during the last split, and now they're going to go into an offline event.
Wait, Roll20 didn't make it?
No, Roll20 didn't make it.
Feels fucking bad, man.
Yeah, like for Roll20 to have made it, Team Freedom needed to have beaten Tempo 3-0, and then it would have gone to tiebreaker. But Tempo actually won that set. So rip.
Freedom clowned quite a bit in that.
I mean, it's an A. They always clown.
Yeah.
Just more and less. But yeah, that's kind of pretty cool that they managed to secure themselves a spot at the LAN event. Tempo Storm didn't look too good for a long time, but managed to get their shit together and qualify as a second seed. But then Gale Force Esports taking the number 1 seed. I wasn't too convinced after the roster changes they did, getting K1 Pro and King Caffeine in, but it seems to have worked out for them.
Didn't they lose to Clown tomorrow at the start of the season?
That may be.
They did, I believe.
Yeah.
They did.
No Tomorrow did look reasonably good there. Wow.
Oh wait, or did?
Yeah, I think...
No, they was to Freedom, I think, and Freedom was to Clown tomorrow.
Okay. But like, there's a thing about Clown tomorrow that, well, Froach has been raging about it, but it feels like they're mechanically good players, but they don't really have that much insight about how some heroes are supposed to be played and worked.
Yeah.
That what? Yeah, the game. I remember that the set I remember that really tilted me was in the first round between No Tomorrow and Freedom, and No Tomorrow did win it. But the first game of that series, which they lost, unsurprisingly, they ran a Viking Zarya cheese, and then they just tried to on Cursed Hollow, and then they just went around taking fort after fort after fort. When their post then is non-existent, and they basically have to end before level 13 with that comp. It was really tilting to watch a pro team do that.
Oh yeah, what's that Tempo Storm? I thought that was.
No, that was No Tomorrow.
That was No Tomorrow that ran that. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And against Freedom. And yeah, that was the.
Okay.
But the Gale Force didn't lose to No Tomorrow. Looking at the standings.
Yeah, they had some sort of cheese too, I think. Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna see them at the Western Brawl. Like Fabulous mentioned, no Roll20, which is kind of surprising, seeing as they were the best American team at the mid-season Brawl. And I also remember talking to Frog about that, and he said like this is the time that Roll20 really just can get the shit together, do that one role swap that they need, and just become dominant in North America, and then maybe having a better showing at the next international event. And it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, like it kind of seems like the role swap seems to have messed up the drafting, to be honest. Like there looks to be so much overlap between Glarang and Goku, and I'm not sure if that role swap has yet helped them at all. Like it seems to have made them worse, and it's forced some really awkward drafts out of them because they don't necessarily have like they've weakened their hero pools and they've weakened their drafting as a result. Looks like.
Also, they're now putting who was the new player?
Goku?
No. I mean, Prismat is now playing Leeming and all those mages, whereas before it was Yoda playing them, and I think Yoda was just excellent on them. And now I watch Roll20 games and I see Prismat just missing skill shots and feeding over and over on mages, whereas I think he is pretty good Dehaka player and stuff like that. But...
Yeah.
What was Roll20's plan anyway? I didn't get why they kicked Yoda in the beginning.
No one did get.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, we as we talked about a lot, we were at DreamHack at the mid-season brawl. We did a lot of interviews and talked to people, and we talked about like the different regions and Roll20, how they were an exciting team, and a lot of the people I talked to, like from the casters and the players and stuff, didn't quite get that trade. Why they got rid of Yoda? He played really good for them, and Goku just has that different the different hero pool. But I guess they had a plan behind it. Maybe they'll get it together before the next phase, and they can still grab a spot at BlizzCon. But we'll just have to wait and see. And from Australia and New Zealand, Nomia is going once again with fan favorite Fat94. Which isn't surprising at all. And again, Red Canids from Latin America are gonna join the rest of the teams. So the question here is: can anyone? Firstly, can anyone beat the European teams?
Probably not.
I mean, it would require an upset. No one was supposed to win Fnatic either, and then there's playing Ducks.
Yeah.
So.
But
yeah.
Not convinced anymore.
Honestly though, like back during the mid-season brawl, like the NA teams actually screamed a bunch of mid-tier EU HGC teams at that point, and across the board, the EU teams won in scrims. Like even like playing Ducks versus Roll20, playing Ducks got favorable results. So it's like. So you could like feasibly argue that the worst EU HGC team is better than the best NA HGC team.
But those are just scrims, right? I mean, in the end, the tournament results really matter. I know it sounds retarded, but in the end, like people do not really care about scrims. Like, I mean, of course they practice and they practice a lot, but they will show up at tournaments more than at scrims.
Definitely, but like it goes both ways, and it's like it's the best indicator there is for how those teams stack up. Like if you were dominant over a team, you would usually beat them in scrims as well. Like there have been exceptions, but
so
same game.
So if you agree that it has to be an upset for anyone to beat the European teams, but I guess the same goes for can anyone beat Fnatic?
I think there's also one thing to be said, can European teams get beaten up, is that people have not been playing against Liquid like they should be. Like, it was not until the last round when Expert realized, hey, they're actually winning all their games with Vikings, and then they finally realized that the Vikings ban is a good idea when they're on Infernal Shrines, which was not such a good idea.
Yeah.
I think if you study European teams, there's a far better chance for other teams, but if they don't, it's just insta-win for EU.
Liquid did win that series, right, against Expert, 3-2? Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see if anyone can knock Fnatic off their perch. They lost their first game in a long while in this whole phase yesterday against Playing Ducks, so anything can obviously happen. Going through quick, really good, do we expect anything from Nomia and Red Canids?
Nomia has been pretty good recently, but they obviously still have the problem, and Red Canids have the same problem. If they have zero competition and zero like really good practice partners in their own region. So there's pretty much a hard cap on how much these teams can improve. And Latin America has historically been probably the worst minor region, and And A and Z, as at least as far as mid-season brawl goes, are probably the best one. So they might be able to. Nomia might be able to do something. Red Canids, though, it's probably just gonna lose to everyone.
Yeah, I recently started to follow the stream of Fat94 on Twitch, and they are pretty good too. So I'm going to cheer for my man Fat94. It's going to see how it works out. But yeah, that's not in a couple of weeks yet, and we'll sure get back to that as the games are being played. On a smaller scale, the best amateur Heroes of the Storm League in the world started up again this week with the 4th season. Many of the games are casted and streamed at the Heroes Lounge Twitch channels, and I'm sure you guys watch some of those games. I just really wanted to mention it quick, as you should go and check out that Heroes Lounge. It's great fun and even better production value. So yeah, that's just a general recommendation. But for now, we are having a short intermission before the map strategy segment, and that intermission will be filled with a click from a Team League game the past week with Frog here invading hard camp. So
excuse me, that was launch game.
That was even a lounge game. Yeah. Oh, okay. Frog can perform under pressure too.
They didn't invade hard camp though.
They invited us.
Yeah, but then you invaded them back. Okay, we're gonna have a look at the clip and then be right back.
Okay, they took
cards. Yeah, now we go. It's important that they took it before we did. So now we can actually depush theirs.
I don't see anyone though, so I'm scared to step up the clear.
We have a really good zone control though.
Okay. Oh, they're invading.
Coming.
Yeah, but I'm killing them. I got 3-man combo on Counter-Strike.
I got the drag.
Murder! The Joanna out, she's in our base.
Johanna.
I'm debated. Okay, she can't get out. I'm just gonna go clear top again.
Yeah. Okay, now we can get the Immortal.
Internet. As promised in the beginning, we're as usual bringing you in-depth information you don't get in other podcasts. Cause why pay for coaching when you can just listen to us and get our resident grandmasters to share of their knowledge? No matter if you only solo queue or dabble in organized play, you will come across the map Sky Temple. It has been in the game since forever, have objectives spread across the map, it's big, and as a bonus has a popular throw pit also called the Boss. And today we'll go through the information you need to up that win rate. Now, when going into a new map or a map and looking at how to win it, we first need to look at the drafts. How you want to draft your comp to have the best chance of winning. And we have some pointers here. The Frog, why don't you start us off with how to draft for Sky Temple?
Well, classically, Sky Temple has been one of the major global maps, along with like D-Shire, Towers, and Warhead, where you often see the, like, before Falstead became nearly unviable because of Genji and all the other things he's just killing for free, you would actually just see a lot of first band rotations. Someone bans the Haka, the other team bans Falstead, and then you go from there because you just don't want to give them that global that has wave clear. So because basically any kind of split push advantage gets magnified on Sky Temple because every structure matters. The objective targets the structures directly and in order. So in order for the objective to siege keeps, you need to take out the forts. So whatever free siege you can get anywhere becomes extremely valuable. So yeah, you need globals, or you don't need globals, but you don't want to be at a disadvantage regarding them, because then your opponent gets the split push advantage, and you actually need a reasonable amount of early game, which is why this isn't the most popular Avatar map.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because on many maps that are big and have focus on XP soaking while objectives are up and stuff like Avatar is popular, but not on Sky Temple.
Yeah, it's pretty much because if you do have the Avatar, then your opponent, you're like, well, not really 4v5 in before 10, but you have a body disadvantage. and which kind of makes it so that that enemy pushes are probably going to be more effective. You're losing front walls all over the map in most cases, and because of temples, that's not like a situation where you can just cut your losses and okay, we'll come back in the late game. You're actually going to lose forts because of that earlier than your opponent, and then you wind up in XP deficits, and then there's the bottom temple, which often actually decides the game in a way, because if you lose that completely, it's so hard to come back.
Yeah,
so
we're going to come back to that bottom temple in a bit, but so looking at the drafts, what we know now is globals are important. That's pretty much it. And
I wanted to argue for Abathur though. Mule
I mean, it's
as we know.
It's not bad.
Mule
per
is
se.
cheat. Mule is cheat.
Mule is pretty cheat, but it's a risky pick because you have to you actually have to compensate for that early game disadvantage pretty heavily. Otherwise, you're just gonna get griefed.
Yeah, I think another problem about Abathur is actually you're gonna lose like walls everywhere. Not even from like people pushing, but from the temples itself. And then Abathur is always exposed if he tries to body soak. So there's like no way where he hides.
Yeah, that's another issue.
Also, though, if you can't get globals in Sky Temple, you should assume that you're going to lose the macro and your win condition is going to be the boss. So if you can't get globals, you should try to look for Tyrael, because then you always have a win condition because you always win boss fights because you have Holy Ground and Sanctification.
Yeah, usually if you can get the macro advantage and you can get the structure lead, then I don't your composition can do that. Then you can just like push in, get structures, and then you just trade temples forever until eventually the temples kill core. But if you're behind in that race, then you obviously can't just trade. And if compositionally you're gonna lose the early game, you're probably gonna be behind in that race. You probably need to just kill bottom fort and then look for boss to win the game for you.
Yeah, assuming condition. So so very like roughly, you either go global and being able to soak and be in front XP wise that way, and from there win the temples, or you draft team fight skirmish. Is that a thought?
Yeah, Sky Temple is a pretty popular map for melee death balls, because if you the other thing you can do if you're behind, if you just try to force really hard on the tempo, if you can win those fights, then you can come back.
Okay, so looking at heroes, are all the globals they rise in popularity here? So you want your Dahaka? Is Falstad still viable?
Yeah, if you ban Genji.
If you ban Genji, is that mostly because of the gank potential Genji gives versus a Falstad?
Yeah, it's very similar to how the Zerato matchup used to be. It's really risky to be out there because you can just be chased down and killed, and you can't really win that 1v1. So whenever you're split soaking, you might get rotated on, and then you're dead.
How about Brightwing?
Brightwing is Brightwing is fine on the map, and it's probably one of her better maps. Even though as a split soaker, she isn't that impactful just because she doesn't have that much wave core. But
yeah, but you have a global and you have some wave carry figure for unstable anomaly, and then you have Emerald Wind to win boss control fights.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think that's the best map to play Brightwing.
But how desperate are you for globals? Could you draft Sagara with Nidus?
I think we've seen that quite a bit in past in AGC. It decreased in popularity after Genji came in. But whenever I play Sagara, I'm not that afraid of Genji just because after 13 I have armor, and Genji actually has some difficulties dealing with Hydralisks. They actually just wreck Genji if you can just kite Genji even for a while.
Kiting Genji though, but yeah.
Okay, so how about a push comp? Is that a way to go? Could you get Vikings and push with 4-man in the bottom or something like that?
Yeah, that's a pretty reasonable way to get a tempo advantage in structures. And we also there was also a similar comp in in the mid-season brawl by Fnatic, where they actually ran Chen as a main tank, and then I think they had the Haka as a split soaker, and then they just had a double support Wawa, and then they had the Haka double soaking the entire game, and the rest of the team went for top fort, then they went for bottom fort, then they got 10 first, so they went boss, and then they killed bottom keep.
Yeah, that was like when Dignitas had like 1% or something left on the core after X minutes. Yeah. That was.
I think that's just how the map works. Either you draft globals or straight up pushing comms, because pushing comms essentially counter globals, since you have characters who are weaker in team fights, and just naturally because they are globals. So you try to force the early game as hard as possible, like get more structures than them and start snowballing, because you never want to fall behind in XP versus globals, because that's where they accelerate.
Okay.
Yeah. This is also the fact that it's so easy to get forts and get like structures on this map, because if you can get any tempos, you're gonna get something. That also means that this is the map for the infamous Medivac cheese. And in a vacuum, it would also be the best Ewiden map. The problem is that picking Abatur is riskier, and often Ewiden comps are also Abatur comps. But like, if you're not considering the Abatur, then this would actually be the single best map to play Ewiden on.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. Like, it's on my sheet there. Like, someone mentioned that this is Illidan's best map, because like distances to safety becomes long really quick. But is it Illidan's best map?
And he can also solo the tempos really efficiently, and he's a global with Hunt. But Ewiden comps are usually they're very often Abatur comps as well. It's such a common duo, and because Abatur is such a punishable pick on Sky Temple, you wind up in this position where, like, in theory, the Ewiden's kit is really well suited for this map, and you see it. You do see it a lot.
The thing is just that, as we just established, the bottom temple is what often decides the game, or things before that, and Illidan gets his global at 10, and before that point, the game is supposed to be almost decided. So it's...
Yeah. Then again, like, I've had surprising amounts of success, like just sacking, like, depending on composition. Sometimes you can sacrifice the bottom tempo, split push on the top lane, and you can get like equivalent value with a lot of comps. It really depends on like, again, what kind of composition you have. Like, can you actually take that fight and win it? If you can't, then you have to mitigate your losses somewhere and get something else.
So, but like, the mentality is that you need the ability to keep even in the early game, because getting outscaled on Sky Temples will result in a snowball from the enemy.
Generally, yeah. Like, it's kind of tricky to come back if you're at that. It's kind of tricky to come back from a deficit because taking temples isn't that risky for the enemy team, and you never have to hard push really. Like, after the mid game, you can just pick up especially when a 2-tempo phase pops up, it's really hard to deny more than half the shots against someone who's competent at rotating.
So Fabulous, would you agree that should be like the mentality in the draft when you go into it for Sky Temple, that you need to keep even somehow, if it is either through pushes or split soaking or just getting both temples all the time?
I would say it really comes down to the draft. But yeah, I mean, you want to keep even at least, right? Either you keep even or you snowball yourself from the early game on. That's why I mentioned the all-in push comms, because I've experienced that happening. People just pick like Oriel, Vala, Zarya, stuff like this, and then there's no way you face them with the global comp, because you just don't have the power to face them. And that mostly leads to them at least getting a fort early on, which you can't trade. So you get like 1 or 2 wards, and you fall behind at least half a level, and that just keep snowballing, especially because of the bot temple. They probably have the better team fighting composition. The thing is just where the globals accelerate is, like we saw from Fnatic, you gotta abuse the fact that you're so mobile that you can just dive on someone who's out of position, or for example, you have 3 people sitting on a temple and you can have 5 people coming in while like you only have 3 there because 2 just fly in bow or whatever. And suddenly you have this 5v3 going on, win the fight for sure, get the temple. That's like the thingy which works against each other. Like they want to have the team fight, but then again you can force the pushing composition to split up because they are still forced to soak, because soaking is so important in the early game. Then you can have people come in and gank.
Okay, so Revitar, when will you choose to do what, like in the draft? Do you have an idea before you get into the draft? Like, we want to play split push, or we want to play push cheese, or like, do you like mix it up as the draft goes along?
There is often a decision between picking just, you always get one global, you either go for Brightwing or then you Falstad Dehaka, or then you go for exactly something like Chen and just push one lane and counter that. And if that's usually the plan, if the enemy team goes for Abathur, because you can really punish the early game disadvantage.
Okay, so you personally like to stall it out kind of and look for what the enemy team drafts so you can counter it?
I like to first pick global almost every time regardless of what happens, because it also helps with the split push, especially if it's Dehaka, because you can do the double split soak and you have global with that. And sometimes the enemy team actually responds to stuff like that with Abathur, so you don't get completely out-soaked. And then you can punish it even more. I look to get Ethereal, if I can, and some heroes that have decent zone control. Like,
is that just for the infamous Bosch throw pit?
It's for that as well, but when you pick temples, people tend to clump up a lot so they can get the objective. And personally, I wouldn't suggest this to every team or every player, but I'm a huge advocate of Alarak, as some people know. And on tight quarters or capture points, I personally love to rank that up a bit higher. For that reason, I also like drafting Kel'Thas and stuff like that there, that just control the temple points.
Kel'Thas is cheat, you can't see the flame strike properly because of the map texture.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is one of those maps, or maybe the map where the flame strike is mostly invisible. Alarak still has the talent where you get sadism from your teammates dying.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, and it suddenly dawns to me now why you like to play Alarak with Frog on the team. Okay, so moving on from the draft, now that we have like a decent overview of how to draft the map. Going into the first minutes on Sky Temple, the first minutes are completely scripted. Like the mid and top temples will spawn at 1.5 minutes, 1:30, followed by bottom temples 2 minutes after the first temple phase ends. So it's not 2 minutes after they spawn, but after the last shot is fired from the first temple phase. What you do in the first phase there?
You keep soaking.
Well,
soak everywhere.
Obviously soak lanes, but one thing that everyone doesn't know, you should really prioritize taking the top temple, because the camp pushes there, and if you take the top temple, you actually get the top well, whereas middle temple starts focusing at tower, I think.
Okay.
Well, it used to be that you focus more on the mid one because you get the tower, so it's more XP.
Yeah, but well, I'm not sure if it destroys the whole tower.
It does.
Okay.
But the thing is just because it comes down to a draft, I would say. Because if you have a better global, or the person who split pushes better, you want to get top, because then your booster camp actually gets the value.
Okay, so if you have the Haka, for example, then you go top lane. And try to secure yourself the top temple in the first phase.
And sometimes it goes for that. If you know you're not going to win early game team fights, you just go to the other one where the enemy team is not at the moment.
Also, it depends on how much the opponent commits. Like, and this goes back to like why you actually just still soak every lane, because if for example the enemy bot laner goes to secure a temple, that should still mean that you can get a man advantage in one of the lanes. Like the lane that's capturing a temple can also soak. So even if the opponent commits their entire team, which they should not, to capturing the temples, then that still means that they only have 2 on one of them. You can still get a man advantage there and soak every lane at the same time. So like in that situation, even if you have like the snowball competition, if your opponent makes that kind of mistake, you should probably just take the one that the opponent committed, take the tempo that the opponent didn't commit most of their team to, and out soak. You can still trade.
Okay, so what you do in the first phase, you put at least 1 man in each lane. Do you just go 3 in either mid and top, and with solo bots? And
yeah, generally.
And then
It
then
depends on your opponent as well.
Yeah.
Like where did they go?
Yeah, and what
Can
kind
you
of
match
comp
them,
they
or-
have. Yeah. But then the first phase comes up with the first 2 temples. And so what you're saying is you wait for the enemy to show where they will focus, like either the mid or the top temple, and you take the other while the rest of the team soaks?
I mean, that's in case you have the worst early game team fighting, or the opponent is overcommitting and giving up soak. In one of those 2 scenarios, then yeah, that's what you do. But like if you have the better early game team fighting, then it makes sense to try to bully them.
Yeah, but you would still want to keep at least 1 guy in each lane.
Yeah, like I think if you don't, you will get punished, because it's like maybe you'll get a bit more than half the shots, but it won't make up for the like lost 2 waves on, probably like 2 waves on each lane that you missed.
There's also a point to be made that in Sky Temple, double global is actually really efficient, because you can actually soak all lanes, and then you can actually just wipe the enemy team or gank the other temple where the enemy team is not, or just use globals in a way that whoever is at bot comes to gank mid, and you get few shots, maybe a kill, and then the other global can just rotate back to the bot.
Yeah,
so to make sure
soak.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of time I see that you just, like, I'm solo bot lane versus some other dude, and then as the temple spawns, we just like see if he rotates, I rotate too, like to not miss the team fight. But yeah, soak is like the mantra here, I guess.
Yeah, like I can see that if he rotates, then you also rotate in like Hero League, because you can't necessarily rely on your team realizing that that's an outnumbered fight and they should seek to trade elsewhere. But if you're on comms, then you should probably just take it. Okay, they've actually screwed up now. Let's just outsoak them.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay here and soak, and you guys just rotate top and secure that temple, and they can have the mid one with their guys. Yeah, because either way, if they choose to let 1 guy stay in mid and rotate top to try and take that temple too, it will be 3 versus 3 in top, and an even fight most of the time at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so if your comp relies on an early game lead being established to snowball, prioritize the top temple over mid, as the top temple will attack the inner tower before the fort, as opposed to mid, which attacks the fort and then the inner tower. We can kind of summarize it with. Moving on to the second temple phase. As mentioned, it begins 2 minutes after the first is done. And here I see a lot of interesting things. Of course, one really popular thing is to cap the hard camp in top. So the enemy either has to react to it, or it gets a lot of value before you move bots. But I also see a lot of teams just prioritizing a heavy push in the bot lane before the temple spawns with the giants that's in the bot lane. If you get that wall, and if you get that well, most importantly of all, it can really like set you up for a good temple phase in the bot lane.
I think it's not only like getting the XP and the wall itself. It's more about creating space, because you can essentially just zone the whole team away from the temple. They can't even enter the space where the
Safe
temple
zone.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
They can't enter those 2 choke points, which you have to go through to actually contest the temple, because you just have like 1 or 2 tanks and 2 like carry and support standing there in front. So you have 1 sitting on the temple and the rest just zoned. So this clone fiesta, where the enemy team actually goes onto the temple and fights you there, and you're completely screwed because you're mispositioned, never happens, because you just essentially, if they somehow get past you, you can just retreat.
Yeah.
So that's like the most important thing, in my opinion. Yeah, for example, tap with the well from the enemy's gun as well.
So what do you like to do here, Avatar, before the second phase? How do you prepare for that second temple phase?
Well, the assumption is that whenever I play Sky Temple, I have the global or I do have Illidan. And if you have a hero that can do a heavy amount of structure damage on its own, like Illidan, for example, I just leave 1 man at top and then 4 can harass the bot, so it will take as much amount of time as possible, so the Illidan can wreck the top fort meanwhile with a Bruce Camp.
But this is most of the time before level 10. So Illidan hasn't picked up Hunt yet, but you will still just leave him in the top lane trying to get some value?
It's not about the Hunt in that case, it's about the Illidan does more damage than the temple itself. If you have the Bruiser Camp, and if your team can buy time, you have something like Li Ming per se, who can do a huge amount of poke damage to make sure that it takes a long time to get the temple. You probably win the phase even by sacking the wall objective. Or then you have global like the Hack and you just clear the Bruiser Camp and join 5 versus 5 at the bot.
What about that Bruiser Camp? Do you like to just stall it as long as possible before you cap it, or just get it done and move down to the bottom lane?
You just want to make sure you time it out in such a way that like it forces that awkward choice. Like it's good. Like the tempo is starting as the camp is marching down the lane. So if you don't have the global, then you have to then the opponent has to make the choice like, okay, do I let this push or do I contest the tempo? I'm gonna have to give up something here.
Okay, so kind of want to stall it as long as possible up until the temple phase before cap it, I see. But we also talked about like pushing the bottom lane before the temple spawns. What do you guys think is like the most important? What should you focus on? Getting that push in the top lane with a hard camp, or just focusing on pushing down the wall and maybe getting the well before the second temple phase?
There's actually a different approach. If you take the Bruiser Camp way before the actual temple spawns, you force the opponent to react ASAP, because they essentially need to take their own Bruiser Camp at that point. Because you start rotating down, take your siege camp, and you start pushing the lane, even invade maybe their siege camp, and you just pressure them on bot side. So they don't even have the time to take their own Bruiser Camp anymore, because they have to contest you on bot, otherwise they give up everything for free. So yeah, that's like the optimal approach if you want to push bot lane. You take your Bruiser Camp ASAP if you have the setup for it, and then rotate down and force the enemy to react what you're doing. Because that's often enough something that you want to happen. Like make the enemy do what you're doing and not try to react what the enemy is doing.
Yeah, that's pretty much what you would do if you have like the composition that like you have the that's like what you do if you have the early game pushing composition and you're trying to just tempo out the game.
But then there's often a scenario where there is somebody who can take camps well alone and something, say, Chromie or Stitches or Alarak, that can on their own just deny enemy pushes even though they were a 4-man on their own with the help of a tank and support. It's hard to push unless you have a comp built around it. And the enemy team also has somebody who can take camps on their own.
But I think that's like a pretty good tip for everyone to just keep in mind that if you manage to take the Bruiser Camp, you can take it early, it won't get value during the temple phase, but you will be able to rotate most of the team to the bot lane and get some pressure there, and maybe even invade the enemy easy camp before the temple phase starts.
Yeah, that just forces the arrow. You will, because if the enemy team reacts to what you're doing and they're not responding to the booster camp, that will still get value anyway. It's essentially the same approach like the temple timing.
Yeah, and that is a big part of this game, like getting your enemies to react to what you're doing instead of being the one that's reacting. I see in my documentary, it says getting a decisive win on the bottom temple in the second temple phase can result in snowballing your lead, as you will hit 10 first and be able to peel off the outer forts. So after the second temple phase, it should most of the time be one of the teams are in the lead. And from then on, if you are in the lead, just sit on the lead. Some of you mentioned that earlier. Like if you get in the lead, especially after the second temple phase, you are good to go. You just trade out temples.
Yeah, like if you get like if for example you get like for example if your composition has the Hakan like a reasonable team fight, and then for example you clear the bruiser camp, then you invade the temple on the bottom side, and then perhaps you get like 2 kills, and then you get like 80% of the temple. Then you've now gotten most of top fort. You're gonna get bottom fort because of the temple. You're hitting 10. You can go kill mid fort. Your opponent may not have gotten a single fort during this time. You just got an 0-3. This is an entirely reasonable scenario with like 2 kills and a global. And then from then on, you should be up a level. Depending on how hard your lead is, you might take a boss or you might not. Like it depends on like the early boss is pretty bad, so you kind of only want to do it if you have nothing better to do. But after that, what you just want to do is you only contest with a talent lead, and apart from that, you just make sure every lane is pushed, and you have you take the vision point on top whenever possible, so you know where the enemy team is going. Like if you have every lane pushed and you have the vision, then it's insanely hard for anyone to get picked, because you just know where everyone on the enemy team is, or you know where they can be most of the time. And then you just continue to time out the camps with the map objectives. So whenever there's a single tempo phase, it's especially good to have like siege giants or bruisers pushing. So then they again have to make a choice. Like even if they're even in talents, you can like send someone back to defend, but then the winning team can come in and take shots for free because you can't fight them 5v4. Or you can just let it push, but then if they have a global, they can actually just help that push along and sacrifice most of the tempo, and still like get even. Or if it's a double tempo phase, you just commit to one of them and make sure you're on the tempo the enemy team is not, and you just keep like maybe the enemy team like starts getting forts because of the tempos, but then you're getting keeps because you got the early lead.
Okay, so for if you are in the lead, you just trade out. You continue doing the mercenary things with timing them out, so they may get some value, but you're not like really you don't prioritize fighting or invading. You just do your thing, keep pressure up on the map, and trade out. Because if both of the teams just keep continuing trading, you will eventually win.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's very little. There's on Sky Temple, if you're winning, there's almost no pressure to make plays.
But Ravatar, what about playing from behind? Let's say this early game and the mid game, the second temple phase, it doesn't go your way for some reason. It seems much trickier on this map to playing from behind.
It's probably the trickiest map to play behind from, but as said in the drafting place, you have something that advocates either pushing or soaking, and you really want to chip in forts and walls if the enemy team is contesting a temple or just deciding to trade, that you leave one guy in the temple and rest just go push and retreat in time so you don't get ganked. But you need to do some kind of move outside of objectives to close out the gap in the XP and take some risks that you don't usually do in other maps.
Mm. Okay, yeah, so I kind of get that. You want to take more risks if you are playing from behind. Fabulous, you have any thoughts on playing from behind on Sky Temple?
Yeah, it's really tricky actually. Like also when you ever close the talent gap, the enemy team doesn't really need to contest you until they hit their next talent here.
Yeah.
It's so hard to say. Like there's nothing particular where you say, oh yeah, that's what you're gonna do when you're behind. But like pushing and maybe trying to force the enemy team to react what you're doing, like recalling and deafing somewhere, is a good thing to do. But then again, it's like not always the solution to your problem. I would say then again, it's coming down to your comp. Like if you have the global comp, you probably just try to make ganks happen. If you realize like someone is soloing a camp, like boozers or whatever, you might want to try and have 2 globals invading there, catch the person, maybe even get the camp. Then you just really have to take those risks because otherwise you're going to lose the game anyway.
Something you might have like seen in pro games on this map is there's way more boss baiting than basically than perhaps on any other map, and it's because it's so hard to force the enemy team to fight you if they're ahead, because they usually don't have to. So boss is like a late game boss is still pretty scary, and if you take it, and if you like threaten to take it, then like your opponent can be at a reasonable advantage and still feel like we can't let them have this, and then they're forced to fight you. But the baiting boss is always super risky, because then you have to aggro it. You might spend some resources on actually burning down the boss to force your opponent to react, and then the fight is kind of disadvantaged. And this also depends on the boss control tools available to each comp. Having boss control is super, like coming back without any boss control is even more difficult than coming back otherwise.
Yeah, okay. We'll touch upon the boss like really quick, but it seems for playing from behind is you soak even talents, try to get on that even talents even if the opponent team is a couple of levels ahead, and you seek to hard engage during a solo team temple phase or a split temple phase if you think that, or if you can see for some reason that the opponent have like only one person soaking a temple. Maybe they get overconfident and just do that. You try to stay out of vision just to keep the enemies guessing, but of course soak that XP and take some risk. You kind of have to take some risk, win a team fight.
Soak XP and try to chip down the bot lane, because I think every single game I've ever won in Sky Temple where I have been losing the early game, I've won it through a boss. So you want to make sure that boss goes either to keep or straight to core. You don't.
That's actually another point why the bot temple is so important, because you open up the map for the boss.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing about Sky Temple is that every single piece of damage you get on structure counts. It's not just entire structure, because they're eventually all going to go down, and one shot doesn't do that much of damage. So if you can damage even fort a bit, it means that you can get probably one fort and then one a wall or another fort with a single temple.
Okay, so let's talk about this, the throw pit, the boss point. We already agree that baiting fights around this is often the most reliable way to get the team fight needed for a losing team to come back into the game. Is that something that you keep in mind when drafting, that you want some kind of boss control? Like Ravitar mentioned Tyrael. We mentioned Falstad, who is both both Falstad and Brightwing, that both is a global and has some boss control. Is that's something that you want in the draft?
Yeah, and also Medivh, because Layla Seal on a boss point also secures it.
But this is obviously one of those places where you see a game ending. Like a lot of things can happen up until that last team fight on the boss point on Sky Temple, and that's where the game ends, kind of. But when you are ahead, you never want to start the boss. Is that correct?
No, like
Okay.
If the boss is off the map, then your opponent, then like the losing team has almost no tools. Like if you something, like I'm not sure if this is something that actually works against like really good teams, but something I've actually had a lot of success doing on this map, or on comms of course, is just take the top bruiser, wait for them to respond. If they overcommit, you just insta the boss. And the rotation from top keep wall
Down
to boss is long enough that if you see multiple heroes there and you have like reasonable boss burning heroes like Greymane, you can just take that boss before the opponent can contest. And if you're winning, like that's maybe a slight risk, but that removes their ability to make a comeback play pretty much. So it's pretty reasonable to do. But like this, but at the same time, this is kind of easy to play around because you shouldn't commit that many people to clear a lane anyway, and you should like have your tank ward that area most of the time if you're behind.
One last thing I forgot to mention. Probably the most annoying thing you can actually face there is that damn Stukov, just because. I remember a scenario where I was playing Stukov and I was just finishing the boss with Aid, something that you shouldn't do because your basic attacks do more damage. But the next moment, enemy team's Alarak deadly charged in and Genji just E'd in to do an X-Strike. And they both charged in and just stood there because they realized they can't do a combo. Genji can't do an X-Strike. There's just a silence zone and everyone just dies, whoever tries to take it. I've started to prioritize Stukov really highly on that map when playing Team League. It's obviously not yet in launch, but after that is
reviewing stats dance game. 3 in my team.
Stukov is a good hero. Spoiler.
No, it's not.
And also having 2 heroics that also promotes zone control.
What about you, Fabulous? Any thoughts on the boss point on Sky Temple?
The drafting thing, I would like to come back to that. I wouldn't ever think about drafting anything that gives me the possibility to take better than the opponent, but I would always keep in mind that like the conditions which are there, like 2-wheel, I wouldn't start boss against a 2-wheel who has holy ground already. That's ridiculous. Also another thing, like the Brutal camp, if you have that pushing top lane, if there's solo temple on top, for example, there's also the big factor that the enemy team might take the boss if you commit too many people to the temple. That's always like a thing, and I've seen that happen a lot. And yeah, you don't ever want to have a late game boss pushing against you, even though the bridge is kind of scary, but it's really hard to defend if you commit properly.
Trollnados are a thing. Galnakunar could tell more about that.
Oh yeah. Galnagunar, our Swedish friend, will probably join us here again soon in the coming weeks. We're kind of rounding out the Sky Temple discussion here. Anyone got any like last pointers, last tips about the maps? Any last thoughts before we round out the discussion?
Don't grief.
Don't grief. Try to not feed. Yeah. Seems good to me. There are some resources that can be really helpful. We'll post them in the show description here, as the nexusmaster.com site have like all the timers for everything, and that can be very helpful to all you theory crafters out there. But that should be much of the information one would need to win the Sky Temple games. We're gonna have a last small break before we round off for today with a clip where Ravatar and Frog shows us why you should think twice before invading their camp. I'll see you in a bit.
team dominated.
Welcome back, and if that clip doesn't convince you to take Need for Speed seriously in Division 1, I don't know what will. But just as that Camp Invade had a brutal ending, so must this episode. I hope you maybe picked up some information you can use in your Sky Temple games from today's episode, and please tell us if you do, because we still value feedback from our viewers and listeners very highly. So if you still have Sky Temple questions, there is a specific map you'd like us to talk about, a subject we should cover in a later episode, or just a suggestion for a really bad joke, just let us know. Comment on Reddit, send us a PM on Discord, or on a Twitter at SlothcastHots. But now for shoutouts and all that stuff. Thanks for coming on the show again, Ravatar.
Shoutouts for my team that are already in this cast for some reason. And shoutouts to Heroes Launch production team. I don't have a friends to shout out. Never mind. Approach your turn.
Ravatar, you have been with us 2 weeks in a row now. Maybe we'll just make this a regular thing.
I'm cool with it.
Since we haven't scared you away just yet. And you even survived an episode with our second guest, Frog. Thanks a lot for guesting us again. Anything or anyone you want to shout out today?
As Ravatar said, just shout out to the lounge. Like I usually don't have shout outs.
No.
Am I supposed to have shout outs?
That's okay. We'll forgive you for now. Can we expect more exciting ways to feed in the weeks to come in the Heroes Lounge?
I never feed.
You never.
You don't feed because you take talents that give you license to feed, and you have always excuse it was worth it. It wasn't feed.
Exactly. That's how you make it not a feed. It's tactical then.
If you trade, it's not a feed. Am I right?
No, but you feed on Tyrael, and then you even in death for enemy team stitches for 1/5 of his health, and then you're like, no worries, I got the trade value.
Exactly. That's worth it.
A big thanks to our special guest this week. I'm fabulous. Was that the right pronunciation?
Yeah.
Okay. How was your first time on the show? Not too rough, I hope?
No, I'm fine. It was great to be here. I would be again, I would say. I actually don't have really any shoutouts. I would make a shout out to my old team, Boosted Bonobos, if they ever see this. We sadly disbanded at some point because people don't have time anymore. But you might see me feed next week in Heroes Lounge because I'm talking to someone right now. They're looking for a 5th guy. And I want to play Heroes Lounge.
Yeah, and we want to see you play Heroes Lounge. That would be great if you can find a team just both to play with us and get your feet wet in the open division. Thanks for coming on. As I mentioned, as myself, I can be found at _Narsha on Twitter and hanging around the Discord. And if you have any friends, neighbors, families, pets, or probation officers that like Heroes of the Storm, feel free to let them know we exist. Thanks to everyone watching, everyone listening, and thanks to the ones that are helping making this podcast. We'll be back next week, and until then, good luck and have feeds.